lovelessness and godlessness, which is very common in human behavior. The natural human heart is selfish and greedy. Judas wanted and expected some tangible benefits for following Jesus. In those days, any prophet or teacher who acted impressively and performed miracles was richly rewarded by those who admired them. Teachers and rabbis with far lesser gifts than Jesus displayed were richly rewarded for their labors. If a teacher was famous, then a flood of gifts were given, and such teachers accepted all contributions as something which they deserved. In Judas' case, he thought, if Jesus is the one whom God has called to be the Messianic King and Lord, should not great treasures be given to him? And should those gifts not be used by the Messianic King instead of being frivolously wasted as Mary had done with the expensive nard? And why was Jesus not more concerned about gathering to himself great earthly wealth and power? Continuing on, the Apostle John sensed what was in the heart of Judas. He realized that Judas was a disciple, but only in the hope of becoming wealthy and powerful through his association with Jesus. By contrast, Jesus was only intent upon doing the Father's will, and neither sought nor cared for human riches. For Jesus, the way of the cross was the means by which he would achieve his goal. Thus Judas must have been bitterly disillusioned with Jesus. Quite likely he felt betrayed that Jesus did not share his hopes for wealth and fame. And if Jesus was a big disappointment and frustration to Jesus, then he likely smoldered with anger toward Jesus and entertained thoughts of deserting him, or at least of gaining some benefit for the years invested in following him. Thus Judas was open to the temptations of Satan. Judas sought a crown of gold, but Jesus awaited a crown of thorns by which he would redeem the world. By telling us that Judas was a thief and recounting how angrily he denounced Mary for her lavish diffusion of the nard, John was telling us in advance why, when the opportunity came, Judas left and betrayed the Lord. John 12, verse 7 to 8 reads, Jesus said, "Let her alone, let her keep it for the day of my burial. The poor you have always with you, but you do not always have me." At this point, Mark, in his Gospel, adds to Jesus' words, "Let her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me." Mark chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus knew, even if Mary did not fully understand what she did, that she had anointed him for his burial. In the ancient world, the body of a deceased person was covered with oil and thus prepared for burial. In Mary's action, Jesus sensed that the time of his death and burial was at hand. Now he had received an anointing which readied him for the grave. If Judas and others wanted to do something nice for the poor, there would always be poor people they could help. But Jesus would not be among them much longer. What Mary had done was something beautiful in Jesus' eyes, for it expressed her great love. So Mary's extravagant act was lovingly given by Mary and gratefully received, accepted by Jesus. But Jesus' words were also a rebuke of Judas' attack on Mary, and Jesus' words of praise and gratitude for what Mary did must have deeply angered and embittered Judas Iscariot. John sensed the insincerity of Judas. He realized that Judas was a disciple, but only in the hope of becoming wealthy and powerful through his association with Jesus. By contrast, Jesus was only intent upon doing the Father's will, and neither sought nor cared for human riches. For Jesus, the way of the cross was the means by which he would achieve his goal. Thus Judas must have been bitterly disillusioned with Jesus. Thank you. I knew it wasn't right. In both Matthew and Mark's Gospel, Jesus added the words, "Truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what she had done will be told in memory of her." Matthew 26:13 and Mark chapter 14, verse 9. When you think about it, this was a remarkable prophecy spoken by Jesus, and it has been fulfilled countless times over the last 20 centuries, and is being fulfilled again today as we speak them. Nothing that Jesus ever spoke will lack its fulfillment. John 12, verse 9 to 11 reads, "When the great crowd of the Jews learned that he was there, they came, not only on account of Jesus, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead." So the chief priests planned to also put Lazarus to death, because on account of him, many of the Jews were going away and believing in Jesus. When the news was spread abroad that Jesus had returned to the Jerusalem area, and also about the miraculous raising of Lazarus from the dead, great crowds of excited people came out to Bethany to see both Jesus and Lazarus with their own eyes. Thus the stage was set for the open and festive entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem on the day that we call Palm Sunday.